So we'll start with the concepts of kinetic theory of gases today. Okay, so in the last few lectures, we have completed the concepts of thermal expansion and the concepts of calorimetry. So make sure you go through all that, and we have an additional lecture on Saturday this week. So we will keep that lecture for discussion of some additional questions and some classwork on that. Okay. So now this is a different section of thermodynamics where we will start discussing about how an ideal gas behaves with respect to temperature, heat, and the various thermodynamic properties, how they are interrelated, like pressure, volume, temperature, etc., of an ideal gas. So the term kinetic, as you know, has to do with motion, and here we will explain the behavior of gases through the the idea that the motion of the molecules, that is the kinetics of the molecules, explains the behavior of an ideal gas. How the macroscopic properties of the gas, like the relation between pressure, volume, temperature, number of moles, etc., are interrelated. The explanation of that is going to come from the kinetic behavior of the molecules, or the explanation of the motion of the molecules. Okay, so that is the meaning of kinetic theory of gases. It is the behavior of a gas, the physical properties of the gas on the basis of the motion of its molecules. Okay. So this will start with what is called the kinetic model of an ideal gas. That is, as I told you, the behavior or the physical properties of the gas based on the motion of its molecules. So kinetic model of an ideal gas. So the physical explanation of the properties of an ideal gas, okay, is what we mean by the model of the ideal gas. So any model will be based on certain assumptions. So the kinetic model of the ideal gas is based on certain assumptions. And the assumptions here are that, first of all, the molecules of the actual molecules of the gas occupy a very small volume compared to the volume of the gas itself, which basically means that the molecules are very, very loosely packed. And most of the volume of the gas is just empty space between the molecules, or the intermolecular space in a gas is much, much larger compared to the actual volume occupied by the gas molecules. Okay. So the first assumption is that the most of the volume of the gas is actually empty space, because the molecules are very, very loosely packed. So the volume occupied by the molecules is negligible compared to the volume of the gas, or you can say volume of the so basically that means that the gas molecules are very loosely packed. The volume of a gas is mostly the intermolecular volume. So it basically means that if you think of gas in a container, most of the volume is empty space. The actual volume of the molecules inside is very, very less. So this directly brings us to the second assumption, that if the molecules are very, very loosely packed, that means the intermolecular attractive forces are more or less absent. So they are negligible. So the gas molecules do not interact with each other on the basis of any intermolecular attractive force. Unlike the case with liquids and solids, where there are strong intermolecular forces, in the case of gases, the intermolecular forces are more or less absent. And the only way the gas molecules interact with each other is when they collide with each other. Collisional impact forces is the only form of interaction between gas molecules. Otherwise, there is no intermolecular interaction. So okay, so this is the second assumption. Now the third assumption is again closely based on this, that all collisions, that is collisions between gas molecules or gas molecules with the surfaces of a container. So all such collisions are perfectly elastic. Impact forces are collision forces. You have done collisions in center of mass, no? Chapter. So you are aware of collision impulse, collision force. So that is what we are talking about. When two bodies collide, during the impact, there is impact forces or there is impact impulse, which is force integrated over time. So you're aware of this concept. Momentum transfer happens from one body to another when they collide because of the impact forces. Just like that, when two molecules collide, there is transfer of impact impulse between them, and as a result of that, there is transfer of momentum. Now, the assumption here is that that will happen in such a way that the collisions are perfectly elastic. So, as you know, perfectly elastic collision का मतलब क्या होता है? Zero loss of kinetic energy. There is zero loss of kinetic energy during impact. Means there's no dissipation of kinetic energy. Okay. So all collisions, whether we are talking about the collision between two molecules hitting each other or a molecule making an impact with the inner surface of the container, both the cases, the collisions are perfectly elastic. And the fourth and final assumption is that the motion of gas molecules is perfectly random. Okay. And called Brownian motion. So Brownian motion is the name given to this perfectly random motion based on certain statistical analysis provided by a physicist called Brown. Okay, so hence the name Brownian motion. So we'll discuss the fourth point in more detail, that what is the meaning of perfectly random. Okay, so just go through the assumptions once, because next we will see that when we develop the mathematical relation between the various parameters of an ideal gas, it is the assumptions that we'll be using. Uh, Not 6 degrees of freedom, Aditya. We'll be talking about 3 degrees of freedom. Because the gas molecules are moving in random motion in three-dimensional space, x, y, z. So we will talk about the Brownian motion with 3 degrees of freedom as per the kinetic theory of gases. Okay. Of course, that will change a little bit when we discuss in more detail about polyatomic gas molecules. So I'm coming to that. Okay. Okay. One more point you can add over here is that in the original kinetic theory of gases, we assume molecules to be particles. Gas molecules are particles. That means they are point masses. Yes, there is Brownian motion. We will discuss about that. Okay. I'm coming to that. Piyush, I'm coming to that. So we'll discuss each of these points, especially the last one in more detail next. Okay. So let's look at the interpretation of this. Then we'll come to the mathematics also. So the interpretation of the first point, that is no intermolecular attraction force. So that means no potential energy. Okay. Because remember, potential energy is to do with work done by internal conservative force. But here we are assuming that the internal conservative force only is absent. Okay. So the only form of energy that gas molecules possess is kinetic energy. This is the basis of kinetic theory of gases. That a gas can only store energy in the form of kinetic energy of its molecules. Okay. So later in thermodynamics, we will see this becomes a very significant point, because we will say that the internal energy of a gas is nothing but the kinetic energy of its molecules. or you can say the total kinetic energy of its molecules. So this is the, you can say it's like the foundation of the kinetic theory of gases. This along with Brownian motion concept. I'm coming to that. So basically, if you think of a solid, inside the solid, you can imagine the molecules are close to each other and they are packed in such a way that there is intermolecular force which is keeping them in place. The only way the kinetic energy exists is via vibration. So in a solid, when you put this under a microscope, basically what you're assuming is that solid molecules are held in place against each other by intermolecular bonds. The structure need not be exactly like I'm showing over here. Okay. The arrangement of molecules in the lattice structure can be different. It doesn't really matter. But the molecules can only vibrate about. Okay. Only vibration possible. Okay. In the case of liquid, so let's say you put some liquid in a container, the molecules can move about, but there is still intermolecular force. So but the molecules can move about. In the case of gas, molecules are very loosely packed in comparison to this. They are completely free of intermolecular space. Of intermolecular attraction forces. So in this, there is certain bond energy. Okay. So for example, when we convert liquid to gas by heating, the latent heat that you're providing is basically the bond energy. You are breaking the intermolecular bonds, so certain amount of energy needs to be provided. Okay. Similarly, here also, the molecules possess a very, very high degree of bond energy. Okay. So that is why when a solid reaches the melting point or the liquid reaches the boiling point, and you further supply heat, the temperature doesn't increase because temperature has to do with the kinetic energy of the molecules. So when you reach that point, when the molecules have exactly that much kinetic energy, that any extra energy supplied means that they will break free of the intermolecular bonds. So then the energy supplied goes into breaking this bond energy, okay, or releasing that bond energy and breaking the molecules free of each other. So that is why at melting point or boiling point, when the state change is happening, there is no temperature change happening because the energy supplied as heat goes into breaking the intermolecular bonds. Whereas in gases, intermolecular bonds are completely absent. So there is no such bond energy. The only type of energy that the gas molecules possess is the kinetic energy. So this is one of the cornerstones of the kinetic theory of gases. Okay. Now we'll discuss about the Brownian motion in little more detail. So what this means is that if you consider gas molecules in a three-dimensional space, then the velocity distribution of the gas molecules is perfectly random, which means that there is equal probability for velocity in any direction. Okay, I will go back to the earlier portion. Finish writing this interpretation. We'll come back to this. Okay, so let's come to the interpretation of Brownian motion and what is meant by perfectly random motion. Let's understand this. Okay, so gas in a container. So perfectly random motion means that the distribution of velocity is perfectly random in all directions. And so this statement of perfectly random, it means that the distribution of velocity is equal in all directions. Okay. So why this happens, let's try to understand. Because if the motion is perfectly random, that basically means that no particular direction of motion is favored over the other. Or you can say in one way that the probability of motion is equal in all directions. Okay, so no particular direction is favored over the other. So perfectly random means that no particular direction of motion is probabilistically favored over any other. Okay. So all are equal in probabilistic distribution. Okay. So if I define my XYZ coordinate system like this, Z axis coming out of the plane. So it means that now this thing equal probability in all directions or equal probabilistic distribution, we can interpret it in two ways. I'll explain. So one way we can interpret it is that we can say that for any particular gas molecule, okay, it has equal probability of motion in any direction at any instant of time. So basically that means that if we randomly pick out a molecule, then its direction of motion is equally likely to be in any direction. It's equally likely that it's moving along the positive x-axis as it's likely that it's moving along the negative x-axis or along the y-axis or at particular angle to the x-axis in the xy plane or a particular angle to the z-axis in the xz plane or whatever. In three-dimensional space, it has equal probability of motion in any direction in 3D at any instant of time. Or another way to interpret the same thing is that for a sample of gas molecules, okay, so suppose we are looking at, let's say, a certain number of moles, like half a mole of gas molecules, if you just pick out from this volume. So in a certain sample of gas molecules, if you look at the velocities of all the molecules, okay, then there will be equal number of molecules moving in any one direction compared to the molecules moving in any other direction. So within that sample, the distribution is perfectly balanced between all the directions. The distribution of velocities as vectors is perfectly balanced between all the directions. So for a sample of gas molecules, the distribution of velocities over direction is equal. In 3 dimensions. So this is another way of interpreting this statement, that the probabilistic distribution is uniform in all directions, or no particular direction is probabilistically favored over the other. So this is the core idea of what we call Brownian motion, or perfectly random motion. Okay, so let's understand this a little bit more closely with some examples which are more relatable from everyday life. Okay, so imagine we have this kind of situation. We have two comparable situations. Let's say we have, okay, this is the top view, okay, of a closed hall. So this is the floor of the hall, okay, and it has a door or an entrance or something like that. Okay, an open door over here, and there are a few people inside the hall. So there is a loosely packed crowd of people on the floor. Okay, and alongside, let us consider another example where this is a top view of an open field. So it's open from all the sides. Okay, and again there are people. Okay, now what happens is that suddenly, if there is a gunshot heard, is heard. Okay, so people start to exit in a hurry. So in the first case, you will see that the direction of motion of the people is going to be towards the exit point. So it is not random. But in the second case, it's open. Okay, so people will randomly choose. So this is more likely to be random. So more likely to be close to Brownian motion. Yeah, entropy would increase. That's also correct, Piyush. Okay. But here in terms of the distribution of velocity, now if I talk about that, so in case one, case two, in case one, the direction of people's motion is not equally probable in all sides in two dimensions, of course. Okay. Whereas in case two, the direction of motion is likely to be equally probable on all sides in the two-dimensional case. So this is an example of two-dimensional Brownian motion. Whereas this is a non-Brownian motion. Okay, so this is just something from everyday life from which you can relate what we mean by equal distribution of probabilistically equal distribution of motion in all directions. Okay, so now let's see what we can mathematically interpret from this. Okay, so back to a gas in a container. So we're back to discussing about a three-dimensional volume. Okay, so if you pick out any particular molecule's velocity, you can say it is Vx I cap plus Vy j cap plus Vz k cap. Okay, now the fact that it has equal probability in all directions. So this is just the instantaneous velocity of a particular molecule, a randomly picked particular molecule. So it has equal probability in all directions, means that if we average out Vx over all molecules, it will be zero. If we average out Vy over all molecules, it will be zero. If we average out Vz over all molecules, it will be zero. So if we average out the velocity over all molecules, it will be zero. So this means summation of mass into x component of velocity over summation of mass for all molecules. Okay. So this quantity here is the average of the x component of V. Okay. So this basically tells me that the average velocity will be zero. That is summation of m into V divided by summation m will be zero. I mean, that also means that the center of mass is not moving, but that's a different point here. We're not really interested in the center of mass here. It is more about the quantity of average velocity, not so much the quantity of center of mass's velocity. Oh, just a minute. Here we don't need to average like this because we are taking a homogeneous species, na? Single gas. So the masses of all the gas molecules are equal. So we don't need to take the average in this way. We just need to take the average like this. It is summation of Vx divided by the total number of molecules. N is number of molecules. So this is average velocity is summation of V over all the molecules divided by number of molecules. So this is the first thing, that average velocity will be zero. Yeah, let's finish writing this, Durgesh. We'll come back to that earlier part. Okay. Now, it also means that if we take mod of V and square it, okay. So now if we take this V square and average it out, so this is called the mean square velocity, or you can say mean square speed. That is the average of the square of magnitude of velocity. So that will be Vx squares mean plus Vy squares mean plus Vz squares mean. Okay. Now the very important point about Brownian motion. Now since the motion is equally probable in all directions, therefore Vx squares average will be equal to Vy squares average, will be equal to Vz squares average. So now connecting it with this statement, means this. So that means if you take three orthogonal directions or three mutually perpendicular axes, okay, and for your sample of gas molecules, you calculate the Vx squares average, that will be equal to the Vy squares average, will be equal to Vz squares average, will be equal to V squares average divided by 3. So this is going to be a very important equation for us. As a property of Brownian motion. Okay. Also, note that we define something called root mean square velocity. So want me to? Okay, we'll come back to root mean square velocity. Note this down first. Okay, so we define something called RMS speed or root mean square velocity. But by velocity, actually, we mean here the magnitude only. So we define VRMS as square root of mean of the square. Okay, so that is nothing but square root of summation V square divided by the number of molecules. So from the above equation, you can see that Vx square's average is equal to Vy square's average is equal to Vz square's average, which is VRMS square by 3. So root mean square of any quantity, it means this. This is square root of mean of square. This is what this quantity means. Or square root of summation x square divided by the number of x's. Okay, so now let us come to the calculation of RMS speed by the kinetic model of an ideal gas. Okay, so let's come back to the calculation of RMS velocity or the root mean square speed basically. So once again, considering a sample of gas molecules, in a container. Now this time, to do the calculation, we will consider it to be a square container. So the dimensions of the container are L by L by L. So these are my gas molecules which are very loosely packed in Brownian motion. So we have the volume of the container being L by L by L. Okay, the pressure of the gas inside is P. So we have N moles of an ideal gas in a volume, okay, at pressure equal to P and at temperature capital T, absolute temperature. Also, let us say the ideal gas in question has molecular mass capital N. Okay. So also we have capital N, which we will take as the number of molecules, will be number of moles into Avogadro's number. Okay. And small m as molecular mass divided by Avogadro's number. So this will be mass of a molecule. So this is actually more like molar mass. In chemistry, it is called molecular weight, but it is more like molar mass. So for example, you know that, helium has M equal to 4 grams. So this is mass of 1 mole of helium. Okay. So these are the parameters. Now we will learn how to calculate the RMS speed on the basis of these parameters. We'll learn how to calculate VRMS on the basis of all these parameters. Okay, now let us consider a perfectly elastic collision between a particular gas molecule and the side wall, okay, which is parallel to the YZ plane. So let us consider within the container a molecule which is moving with a velocity like this, coming and hitting this surface. Okay. Yeah, Shikhar, we'll go back to that. Don't worry. Okay. So this is a wall parallel to the YZ plane. So if a particular gas molecule comes and hits this wall, so let me draw a two-dimensional diagram of this now. So in the two-dimensional diagram of this, we'll understand that if a molecule moving with a velocity like this comes and hits this and makes a perfectly elastic collision, then after impact, it will go off like this, such that its kinetic energy remains conserved, and only the component of velocity which is normal to the surface, that gets reversed. Okay. So this is our x-axis. So a molecule of mass m, okay, suppose it makes an impact with a speed of Vx I cap plus Vy j cap plus Vz k cap. Okay. Now the impact is perfectly elastic. Okay. So the coefficient of restitution is 1. So therefore, so it makes an impact with this initial velocity and sets off after impact. At a velocity where the x component of velocity will just get reversed in direction and y and z components will remain conserved. So this is as per the collision theory, that when a particle makes a collision with a surface, if the collision is perfectly elastic, then the normal component of velocity gets reversed. So the normal component is reversed and the tangential component remains conserved. So that is why this is becoming minus Vx from this plus Vx, whereas the tangential component is conserved. Okay. So you can see that the collision impact force, or rather the impulse that is acting on the molecule as it hits the wall, we can think of that as an F delta T. So the collision impulse, okay, on the molecule will be the change in momentum or the magnitude of this impulse is 2 mvx. Okay. So now this is for a single molecule. Okay. So this is, so on the wall, a single molecule coming and making an impact will result in an impulse on the wall which acts in the opposite direction like this. So impulse on the wall from a single impact or a single collision is going to be this. So from this, we are going to find out on an average how much force acts on the wall. Okay, by averaging this out over the number of molecules, because all molecules are continuously in random motion. So from time to time, they keep making such impacts with any one of the six faces. So on any one face or any one wall of the container, on an average, there will be a certain amount of force that is continuously acting because of these collisions. And that force per unit area will give us the formula of pressure. And that's how we will see that pressure is related to the RMS speed. Okay, so let's understand from this how we will calculate the pressure. So this is the impulse on the wall from a single collision. Okay, so now from n number of molecules colliding with the wall, okay, the total impulse, okay, will be n into the average impulse per collision. Okay, so that will be nothing but n into 2m Vx mods average. Why we are doing Vx mods average, remember, is because Vx average is 0, okay, but Vx mod average is Vx squares average or square root of Vx squares average. Okay. This quantity. So this is related to RMS velocity now, remember. So average impulse per collision, if it is this much, then that's this much. Okay. So the total impulse acting on the wall because of n such collisions occurring would be equal to this quantity. So now the force, you can say the average force where tau is the average time between two successive collisions by a molecule. I'm just using the symbol tau. You can use capital T also. But this is the average time between two successive collisions by a molecule. So if we divide this total impulse by the average time between two successive collisions, we'll get impulse per unit time, which is nothing but force. So this will be the average force that the wall is experiencing. And further pressure will become force upon area. Okay, so we are coming to that. Okay. Now see what is happening is that we have a cubical container. So if a molecule has just hit this wall and has a x component of velocity like this. So suppose it's making a random kind of motion also. Okay. All collisions being elastic. Okay. This mean relaxation time or the average time between two collisions will become 2L divided by Vx. Okay. Because time between two successive collisions with a wall in the YZ plane. Okay. So this time can be calculated as the distance along x-axis divided by average Vx. Or you can say, since we are talking about a single molecule, so we don't need to average this out yet. We can just say, so between two collisions with the same wall, this is traveling a distance of how much? It is traveling a distance of 2L because it's traveling along the x-axis, first along the negative x-axis through a distance L, and then again along the positive x-axis through a distance of L before coming in contact with the same wall again. Okay. So this becomes this. Yeah, it's tau. It doesn't matter what symbol you use. You can use capital T also. If you are not comfortable with the symbol tau, you can use capital T. So this quantity, we will now substitute back over here. Okay. So the average force actually this is average time, okay, between two successive collisions. So since this is average time, we have to average this out also. So as you can see, we get this quantity. Okay. So this is the average force. So therefore, the pressure now on the wall will be equal to this average force divided by area. So that will be mvx squares average divided by L divided by area of the wall, which is L square. So it becomes mvx squares average divided by volume, because remember the whole volume of the container was nothing but L cube. So we have a relation between pressure and volume and Vx squares average. Now remember, from Brownian motion, we had a relationship between Vx squares average and the RMS speed. So that is what we'll use finally to find the RMS speed in terms of volume and pressure. So the n did not cancel. There is n also here by mistake. Just make a correction. There's an n also over here. Okay, so the relation that we have got so far is that P is equal to total number of molecules into m into Vx squares average divided by volume. Okay. So we have got Vx squares average is equal to PV divided by number of molecules into mass per molecule. Okay. Now we'll recall that Brownian motion gave us the relation that V RMS square was 3 times Vx squares average. Okay. So we can replace Vx squares average as RMS speed squares divided by 3. Cancel. How will we cancel Vx average, beta? This is in the achal. This is like this, na? There's a divided by sign over here. See, this quantity, na, is coming in the denominator, na? Yeah. Just add the by sign over here. It was missing. Okay. So further, we will substitute now Vx squares average as RMS speed square divided by 3. So this is equal to PV divided by NM. So now we get the formula that we were looking for. The RMS speed in terms of pressure and volume is given by this formula. Okay. Now further, something important here is that N into M is the same thing as number of moles into molar mass. Because remember, capital N was number of moles into Avogadro's number, and small m was molar mass divided by Avogadro's number. So N into M is the same thing as small n into capital M, is nothing but the total mass of the gas. Okay, so we can also write RMS speed as square root of 3 PV divided by number of moles into molar mass. Okay, so this is the interesting thing about the kinetic model of the ideal gas. By using very simple Newtonian mechanics, and collision theory and things like that, we can get a relation between something which is a microscopic property of ideal gas, the RMS speed, and the pressure and volume, which are macroscopic properties, which you can measure. If you think about it, you can't really come up with a method to measure RMS speed, because the gas molecules, the way they are moving, experimentally is going to be virtually impossible to actually measure their individual velocities and then, calculate their magnitude, sum them up and do that statistical average. But this is giving us a theoretical way of finding the relationship, that how we can estimate the RMS speed just on the basis of the macroscopic properties, which are very easy to measure, like the pressure, volume, and the number of moles of gas in a container. And if it's a known gas, then you know the molecular mass already. So this is the effectiveness of this thing. So for example, yeah, I will send the notes, Prachi, don't worry. So let's just wind up today's lecture with an example. So suppose we have helium gas, okay, at a pressure of, let's say, 2 atmospheres, okay, in a container of volume equal to, let's say, 5 liters. And we have 1 mole of helium gas. Okay. So we want to find the RMS speed. So we'll just use this formula. In this formula, we will substitute pressure 2 atmospheres as approximately 2 into 10 raised power 5 pascals, or Newton per meter square. So there's another thing we should note down over here, that SI units for pressure, the SI unit is Pascal, where 1 Pascal is equal to 1 Newton per meter square. Okay, because pressure is force per unit area. Okay, and the non-SI unit is atmosphere. So one atmospheric pressure is approximately 1.01 into 10 raised power 5 pascals. So typically we just take it as 10 raised power 5. Okay, and for volume, the SI unit is meter cube, where 1 meter cube is equal to 1000 liters. Okay, basically 1 liter is 10 raised power 3 milliliters, which is the same thing as 10 raised power 3 centimeter cube. Okay, so that's how we get that 1 liter is 1,000th of a meter cube. So you can always keep this thing in mind, that 1 milliliter is the same thing as 1 cubic centimeter. Okay. So we'll substitute the pressure as this. We'll substitute the volume as 5 into 10 raised power minus 3 meter cube, because it was 5 liters. And we'll substitute M as its helium. So 4 into 10 raised power minus 3 kg. Remember, molecular weight of helium is 4 grams, which means that the mass of 1 mole is equal to 4 grams. So that in kgs will become 4 into 10 raised by minus 3 kgs. And number of moles is already given to us as 1. So VRMS in meters per second will become square root of 2 into 10 raised by 5, that's the pressure, into the volume, which is 5 into 10 raised by minus 3, divided by number of moles, which is 1, into molar mass, which is this much. So as you can see, that will become square root of 10 raised by 6 divided by 4. So that's 10 raised by 3 divided by 2, or 500 meters per second. Okay, so this is actually a typical value. Gas molecules, typically have RMS speeds which are in this kind of range. Which one 3, Shikhar? Oh, sorry, yeah, 3 PV divided by. So there's also a 3 here. So this final answer should become 500 root 3. Okay, you can approximate that as 500 into 1.73. Something like this. So typically gas molecules under, standard types of pressure, volume, and that kind of thing, they have speeds which are kind of similar order of magnitude as speed of sound. Speed of sound at normal temperature and pressure at STP, it is about 330 or 334 to be more precise meters per second. So typically gas molecules, unless they are at very high temperature or very high pressure, etc., they will be having order of magnitude of speed around that speed of sound mark. Okay, so this is a very important set of derivations that we've done today. You will find all these derivations in any standard book like Resnick Halliday, or even H.C. Verma has the derivations in very short. Resnick Halliday has the whole explanation of Brownian motion and the average probability, etc., in much more detail. The type of detail we've discussed in class today. Or you can also go through from NCERT. But for theory, I recommend Resnick Halliday. Okay, so we will conclude here today, people. And next lecture, which we have on Saturday, we will see now how to bring temperature into this relationship. Today, we have seen the relationship between RMS speed and pressure and volume. And then we will see later how to bring temperature into this relationship and find the relation between RMS speed and temperature. And from that, the relationship between pressure, volume, and temperature, which is that PV is equal to nRT. But that ideal gas equation, which otherwise comes from the experimental Boyle's law and Charles' law's combination, can also be derived theoretically by the same set of assumptions that we have seen today for the kinetic model of an ideal gas. Okay. So a lot of work for you to revise through this derivation, etc., before the next lecture. And also, please go ahead and complete problems from your module to do with thermal expansion and calorimetry. On Saturday's lecture, we will also keep aside some time for discussion of doubts and some questions from thermal expansion and calorimetry, because those are two very simple topics. So, when we get into thermodynamics proper over the next few weeks, we will not be coming back to those topics so much. Okay, so make sure this week you complete questions from thermal expansion and calorimetry from your module and discuss the doubts with me. Okay. So that's it for today's session, people. Wish you all the best.